Right? But the air conditioner doesn't work today.
Not very good.
Yeah.
They have one.
Yeah,
No.
I'd say that.
No.
Open up the window.
Depends how fast it goes.
He doesn't have much track to go on.
I did.
Well, out here we don't go there.
This gentleman is giving a tour.
The world's, it's the country's shortest excursion line, 173 feet.
Oh, wow. Thought it was less.
No, it's 173 feet of track.
Okay.
I think that counts what's inside the building.
Oh,
How do you know it's 100?
No, it's written down somewhere.
Oh,
I read it somewhere, and I'm assuming whoever wrote it was correct.
That was 50 feet.
yeah, I thought that's what I heard is 50 feet.
okay. Now the first thing we do is hunt for the shade, right?
Yeah.
There will
This
be
gentleman
the
is
first
leading the...
chair.
In the shade.
Now, Mr. Hershey.
Yes, I have the pictures.
No, all right, the map. Let's.
I have the map.
All right, stand right here, and we'll have you. I'm going to point out a few things. First of all, Manheim was laid out in 1762. All right, this was basically as the Anabaptists went through here. They said, in looking for a place to establish their church, which would be Hernley's, they noted in their history that they had to go through a swamp. That was Manheim.
Ah, so this is one.
Right, this whole lower end was swamp at the time. When it was laid out, now this is a 60 map, 1860, and we're going to be talking mostly about the 1800s. They had 3 schools: the Northern School, the Central School or the German School, and the Southern School. These were all one-room schoolhouses. And of course there was no higher education in 1860. The newer school in 1869, I believe it was built right here. Here's the Lutheran Church, so it's right there. As you can see, this is country. You go 1/2 block away from either Charlotte Street or Main Street, and you were in the country. There was nothing below Stiegel Street. This is all blank down here. This would be the south end. This is where we are now. Take notice that the road comes to a Y when you come in Fruitville Pike. Every house in this town at the time was built right on the street. If you go over and look at the Bartriff house on Main Street, it sits back. The reason it sits back that 40 feet approximately is because at that time you came in Fruitville, you forded on Fruitville Pike, and then you turned off at the Y, and that's why that house sits back. Then in 1854, the Plank Road was made from Market Street, or Market Square, excuse me, to Lancaster through Petersburg.
This map, I'm currently holding it upside down to what our orientation is.
Well, the orientation would be like that.
Yeah, about like that.
Yeah.
Crusoe
South
Pike comes
being
in
this
down
way.
here next to Turkey Hill, or Twin Kiss.
Right.
Down in
Okay,
here.
and the Plank Road, then that straightened Russian Street or Main Street out at the time. That was the first bridge in Manheim, 1854. Otherwise, you got your feet wet.
You mentioned the Hernley's Church. Is that the same one that is now up and?
Well, there was one, they said it was further into what would be cemetery now.
Okay.
Okay. And this one was built, I'm sorry I don't have that in here.
Okay.
I know the history is that was the first one, then they moved the one out.
It's interesting. The current one looks like it has very light attendance. There's only a few cars there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I drive by it.
And
every
that
summer.
used to be a real heavily used church. I think that's going around to all of them, even ours. I mean,
yeah.
But all right. Well, the Plank Road. The Plank Road. This is just a drawing of Carlson's, where he drew just a picture of it because we have no photographs. But it ran from the square in Lancaster to the square in Manheim through East Petersburg. And it was one lane, and there would be turnouts where you could see the next turnout. If somebody was coming, you waited where it was double.
So was that a plank?
Plank
layer?
road.
Wooden
Is
plank.
that right?
Wooden
Oh,
plank.
wow.
It didn't last long
of the
because,
swamp, right?
pardon?
Because of the swamp?
No, just
No?
that was the high turnpike, the Lancaster.
It smoothed out the dirt roads.
In other words, it was, and the reason they called it the 2040 road is that people would go fast in their horse or their horse and buggy, and if you go a mile in 2 minutes and 40 seconds, you're going 23 mile an hour. It was considered speeding.
They kept
All right.
them.
Basically, we're going to talk about this area. We are here, South Charlotte. We're right here on the map. This first railroad station was on that piece of land, and there was a railroad Y here. Now, a Y is this line with a line like this and a line like that came in. Basically, if your engine was facing that way, you back through the Y, come out the other end, you're now facing that way, and hook up to your cars and go. There was an engine house, which we have no pictures of, other than I'll show you a couple places. And it was built in '62. We know the roof blew off of it in '64 in a storm per the paper, but never yet have I found in the paper whether it was torn down or what have you. Now here I want to show you this map of basically the area we're right here at the news station, built 1881, opened in September. We're going to walk around, come down to Railroad Avenue, across, back New Charlotte, and then down to right here. And this is where be the end. This station, I said it was opened in September of 1881. It was raised. Let's go to show you the picture of, well, that's not a good one either. Next, go back where you were. Try the next one.
I know.
I'm going to get these pictures straightened out. You're on the third one. Next one. There we go.
Okay.
Now, if you take notice, this wall isn't as high there. What happened is they physically raised the station in, I think it was 1890 or 91. Then at that time they put the track around the backside so they could put the freight over there because it disrupted having the freight on this side. So for 10 years they played with that and said, oh, we got to do better. So they put, well, when they built this station, they got rid of the Y, put the track around the back, and raised the station so it would be the same height as the freight cars on the other side.
Is the track still active?
Pardon?
Is the track still active?
Yes, Norfolk Southern. Yeah. Conrail abandoned the station in '76.
And when you are having a meeting in here on Tuesday afternoon and the train comes rolling down this track, you wait till the train gets past and then you finish your meeting.
I
So they're
guess.
constantly blowing, obviously, for every intersection, too long or short, and then across the intersection.
Is it
And
commercial?
there's one right after another.
Does this handle commercial or
Freight.
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 Yeah.
Freight. Oh, people haven't been on this line since 1950.
Okay.
All right, we'll take a walk again. Now let's think we're after 1762, and we'll go out here and look at the mill that was built.
For those of you that have been through the station, right in here behind water, there's the two big levers that aren't switch levers. They're semaphore levers. Up here's the semaphore that they controlled for the train order signals.
Reading it correctly, you said high water?
No, the semaphore for the
Oh.
train orders.
know there's area down here that's flooded pretty bad.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Amanda,
You can stop in the next shade and look at it.
yeah. Here's the semaphore that it controls. This is actually original
Wow.
to the station.
Yeah.
And these would be
That's
the
the
levers
original.
control that through linkages.
Okay.
That was put in, again, the same time
So that's the original.
they put in the track around the back, or the south side. So there was 3 tracks here. I'll show them this picture.
This picture.
And over here was the Klein Lumber Company. And we had 3 tracks here, on this side and a switching track on this side. It was operated by the Reading and Columbia Railroad at that time. Then it went to Reading, I wish I had the date in my head, but Reading and Philadelphia, and then just Reading.
So this is all a turnaround track then? No,
Pardon?
This was
The
a
Y was just gone sometime between 1862 is when the railroad was put in, and the Y. We know the roof build came off the building in 1864, and then this was built in 1881. This disrupted the Y. So sometime between 81, that was no longer used. All right. Oh, and the first station, I missed a story. Well, we're in the shade. We're in the shade. Over in the first station, which we don't have a picture of, Dr. J. Francis Dunlap spent much of his time as a boy at the railroad station talking to the telegraph operator. One day in 1865, April 14th, when the doctor was 12 years old, he and his friend, the operator, were talking when suddenly the key began to click, 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 click. Instantly, the operator became tense and said, "Shush." Then he said, "Lincoln's been assassinated." Since there were no radios and extra newspapers to spread the news, the doctor covered the town, shouting the news of the assassination of Lincoln. April 14th, 1865. So, and January 10th, 1890, now here I have the date. That's when the siding was built, the station was raised. Okay, now we'll look, well, we can go out here a little bit. All right.
And what we're using for the trolley track is not the old siding, because the trolley doesn't run on the same size track as the train does.
The siding,
Different gauge.
where these box cars are, and it went
That
all
would
the
be the
way
siding.
down.
Okay.
And this would have been the freight loading and unloading.
How far west does this track go, do you know?
Well, now, or,
Then,
Columbia.
all right,
oh,
there
just to
was
Columbia.
there was a sign. Would you go back to the lumber mill? I'll point something out.
That one.
The lumber mill, yeah. There's a milepost there. One says Columbia, so many miles, and one says Lancaster. One says C for Columbia and L for Lancaster. And it's right there.
Yeah, right there.
All right. It's a milepost marker.
That's a whistle marker.
Oh,
This is a
Yeah, this
milepost marker.
no, it was over there on that corner. And it, believe it or not, it was here for years and years. It would have been right about where the parking lot, because see, there was 3 tracks here for many years. It wasn't that long ago 2 of them were taken up.
You can see where they were, you know.
Right,
The ballast is
basically
still
in
there.
in that area. All right, while we're still in the shade, let's go to the mill. On this corner where the green fence is over there, there was a mill built in 1880. It was built by a Mr. Eby, very common name in this town. And it went through a number of different stories, like Jones owned it, Farm Bureau owned it, Agway owned it, and Agway closed it in 1999. And the building was raised. This building was raised in 1999. And one story was that the mill was updated by Mr. Jones, and he contracted with McNulty Mill Furnishing Company. And we're going to see that here in a little bit on our tour. After the refit, the mill ran day and night, giving employment to 14 people as millers, coopers, drivers, and laborers. The capacity increased from 150 to 250 barrels of flour a day. And they made the Bob White flour. I'm not familiar with that, but supposedly that was a famous flour. And it was supposed to be the highest grade at the time produced. Okay, gone. All right, now we'll have to go out in the sun because we're going to go around the corner and look at the foundry. Now on this spot, Mr. Hershey will show you a picture of a small foundry that sat right on this corner of the tracks. In fact, you'll see the track coming in. And we figure this is 68, so the track on that picture is not this one that the boxcars are sitting on. We think that we went to the Y at the time, but we're not 100% sure. This foundry was started by Elias Brunner and Daniel Erb. Now, there was quite a few different owners. There was John Dutt, there was John Bumberger, John Irwin, Franklin Diller, and during Franklin Diller's ownership, the place burned down. In 1900, B.H. Hershey and a John Koch bought it, and they started Manheim Casting Company, and that's what you see here. And he ran it as B.H. Hershey, and you go to the next slide there, and then until 1955 it became Fuller Company.
Okay.
No, it 2022.
My wife worked there back in the early 60s.
I worked there briefly. Between when he was a young man and
That's this
what do I
building.
want to do?
Pretty obvious.
That's full.
So that is a very, very large, but it was just a small corner of property. Now, if you go to the next photograph,
What did they do there?
foundry. In other words, mostly farmers, pig troughs,
Yeah.
things like that. You know,
Metal.
anything a farmer would need.
Right.
Casting.
Metal.
Metal
Plows,
casting.
right,
Iron
exactly.
casting. Iron metal casting.
And now we'll talk about the Brem brothers. Anybody know any Brems here in Manheim? Let's go. In fact, we can't see it from here because this is not the building. The
It
building
would have been
the original
sand casting.
building was torn down.
Iron. Troughs, pump trays. Farm implement parts.
Please don't stand on a Tesla track. It might come flying out down the track.
Oh, wow.
All right, this building was rebuilt as a pattern shop for
You can come over here.
B.H.
It's not
Hershey.
gonna, they're not going to run into us.
But right now, in 1871, the Brem brothers started a planing mill at this building, or at this area. Building is that picture. Then H.E. Shemp had it, then Manheim Milling had it, and now in 1892 we come to the McNulty Furnishing Company, Mill Furnishing Company. Oh, I wanted to point out, there's our engine house to the extreme left there. That's about as good as we get. Now the next photograph is McNulty and his crew. Now he managed to get, you can see all the people there. He had quite a crew, and unfortunately he was a little bit like Stiegel. He was a mechanical genius, but he outspent his income. And he's the one that made the equipment when they upgraded over here. And he thought, boy, this is a good place, so he brought his mill here, and it only lasted a year. In let's see, I have the year here that he sold everything. I guess it was 1897. He had to sell all his patents to settle his debts. So, unfortunate situation. Then the next photograph, again the same building before it was torn down. It became the Nelson Novelty Works, 1896. Basically it's McNulty with a different name on the sign. And he ran it for quite a few years until Hershey Machine bought it, tore it down, and then built the pattern shop over here. And that's what it was used for originally. Then it was used just for storage. All right, now we'll go over, well, let's just walk down this side. So this gray building here is our next. Now, this is the site of the Yoakum. Now, the engine house, obviously that building didn't come down quite this far. The engine house was right in here. Then the Yoakum Pretzel Bake, Bretzel, B-R-E-T-Z-E-L, German, German pretzel. They say, I asked about that. There was a lady here on our very first tour, and she said, well, they're sweeter than a normal pretzel. Must have sugar in it. I'm not that old. All right, there was a pretzel. This was written by John Kendig, if any of you from Manheim know him. He wrote for the Sentinel for 40-some years. And this was written by him in 1971. There was a pretzel bakery in Manheim, down near the railroad station, run by a man named Yoakum, where the boys were always welcome. We purchased broken pretzels, called cripples, for almost nothing a pound. And on one occasion, I remember one of my cousins actually stole about 2 pounds of cheese from his grandfather's store. And with a bag of cripples, we had a feast at the swimming hole, washed down the pretzels and cheese with cold water from a nearby spring. What used to fascinate me about pretzels was watching the benders, as they were called, make a pretzel out of a piece of dough by the action of merely throwing the rolled out dough into the air. It went up as a piece of dough. It came down our pretzel, not at all. I don't know if I believe that. The aroma around the old-time brick oven often was something that cannot be described. It was something like the smell of an old kitchen when bread was being baked in a wood stove. The pretzels were always served with a plate of ice cream. It was a far superior to ice cream and cake. The contrast between the sweet ice cream and the salty pretzel seemed as perfect as ham and eggs, corned beef and cabbage, liver and bacon, and other well-known inseparables. So that was the Yoakum bakery. Now, The next house, it was a warehouse, the green. It's marked on the old insurance maps in the late 1800s as a warehouse. But I couldn't find anything that it wasn't a residence in the last 100 years. So we'll call it a residence now. Warehouse slash residence. And then we'll talk about the next building. Oh, I can see you guys are hard working.
We're doing what we do best. That fence hasn't moved, has it?
Hey, how come you're not burning the Tesla? Oh boy, oh boy.
Now we ride. If you haven't ridden the Tesla, the price is amazing, free.
All right.
What if it ran from here to Rocky?
To show the people
One time,
Yeah.
one time I ran from
corner
downtown,
store.
like, Rocky.
Okay.
Never from here.
Okay.
the corner store. All right, this corner store was run at the time of this photograph. Paul, Bertha, and their dog Queenie. This was 1905. We don't, yeah,
Yes.
at that
That's
building
that
right
building.
there.
If you look at it.
Obviously taken from down the street. Okay, now the only thing I could this has been used ever since it was built in the 70s, 1870s, as some kind of a store, whether it be dry goods or what have you. Now, the last was Hilliard's, and then Ulrich, the oil dealer, used it for a while just as an office. So really Hilliard's was the last store. Now, in this building, in 1895, Admiral Samuel Ginder was born. Now, he was a flying admiral of World War II, and there was very few admirals that were aviators. So that's the fame for that building. Now we'll talk about sub the hood. Everything below the tracks. You know what I mean? Below the tracks. Dr. Oliver from Philadelphia bought 14 acres down here, and he subdivided it in 1869. He knew that Manheim was an up-and-coming borough and there was all this development. He put it off into lots, and he sold the lots for, any guesses on how much he sold a building lot for?
$50.
Almost.
40.
Almost. Although you're going the right direction.
25.
25.
Oh my goodness.
$25. He sold the building lots. It's just amazing. And of course, there was, you can see how close the houses are, and the lots were not big. Now this next building across the street, the picture he's going to show you was when it was used as a knitting mill. In 1906. All right, Amos Kaufman and who's the other name? Whitmire ran it in the beginning. Then it became Amos Kaufman's, and then he didn't do so good. They made union suits there. All right, and a lot of them. He had a lot of sewing machines in that building. Okay.
What's in there now?
Dave's Automotive.
Oh,
as
it's
the
automotive.
sign says, so it's a garage on the other side.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but this again was built as a warehouse many years before. Now, instead of walking, can we just look at the street from up here? Let's move this thing. I don't know about you, but I'm on.
Yeah. What's interesting, in the 50s, every town, small town, had a shoe factory, clothing factory.
We lost the shoeing factory because we had too many sewing factories. we didn't have enough people to furnish for the sewing factors, and that's why a lot of the, we'll just stand right here at the end of the station and look at the buildings. Hey, we can be in the shade. Huh? All right, the next building down is the hotel. The picture of Mr. Hershey will show you there is Milton Castle bought the hotel, and he owned a mill at White Oak. He owned a mill at Lancaster Junction. He had
That would be that house with the red shutters.
The yellow building down there.
Oh, the yellow.
I believe. No, if I think
Yeah,
the gray one.
the gray one with the red shutters, right?
a lady asked me about this building. Was it a house of ill repute? Well, I was shocked. I didn't know what to say.
No, a lot of these buildings, really, you can still see the original design.
That is the original building here. Okay. Now the next building next to it is now just garages. He's going to show you it was built as in 1870 as Eisen Brown's Marble Works. Now at this time, at the time of the photo, was 1900 when his competitor Sullenberger had bought it. Okay. There was 2 granite dealers in this town. Why, I don't know. That is amazing. Now I'm sorry.
You mentioned the White Oak Mill. This is the same one that's on White Oak Road, north of Manheim?
I just assume it was the one that was there. I don't know if it's there anymore.
Well, it's not
Right
there.
at
It's
the,
there
where
as
the
a-
old dam used to be.
Yeah, it's there, but not as a mill anymore.
Okay. Well, didn't Peters or somebody have that for
They do repairing furniture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. The next one's kind of a fun picture. This is how they put gas lines in years ago. This was actually after, this was about 1910, putting a gas line in Orchard Street. Yes, can you imagine?
No.
That's why they
That's just a fun picture. Now the next one we'll go to is we're now out on Main Street. Well, Prussian Street at that time. Main Street. Oh, man. All right, on Prussian, this is Daniel Erb sitting down. He owned the place. And the man with the shovels, John Hostler, he shoveled the front. And David Lutman drove the team.
The getaway car.
Yeah, the getaway car. Now they sold it to a number, I mean, he sold it, Erb sold it to a Rule, and then I believe it was Keel. Now when Keel owned it, look at the next picture. This was 1944.
This
When
was,
we had a-
this was how they delivered coal, by the way. That was coal delivery.
This is how they get it though, from the mine in the car. Now we have a 1944 story from the paper why it was pushed out. Now Ben Hershey told me this story. He said the engineer was upset about how smoky it was in the barn. And he said, I'm gonna air this out. And he pushed the car right out through the end of the building.
This would have been down here, and that would have been, they pushed the cars up so they